Okay, let's get into our next lesson. This is lesson 3 on verbs. This is Mr. Riddle's writing class. I'm James Riddle, your instructor. And so let's go ahead and get into this. What we're going to be doing today is getting the first 3 types of parts of speech down. Okay, we have nouns so far, we have pronouns, now we have verbs. Those are the basic parts of speech, just those 3. Nouns, pronouns, and verbs. What we get into after that is going to be building on those 3. We're going to take a little detour after this so we can develop sentence structure. Okay? So let's go ahead and get started here. So first of all, what are you reading? So remember, whenever you read, you're putting those references in your mind. You're helping your mind, you're training your mind in order to be able to speak to your audience the way that they want to be spoken to. Okay? And remember, it's just like I have this book here, Brain Building in Just 12 Weeks. This is by Marilyn Boss Savant, certified genius. Whenever we talk about savant, we're talking about genius. Well, this is the person that we're talking about, Marilyn Boss Savant, IQ of 200. She's smarter than Sheldon Cooper. Okay, but she proves in this book that you can increase your IQ, and it works. I tried it. It works. It does make you smarter. Okay, but anyway, if you open the book, you'll see that no matter where I open it, it's paragraphed. It's properly paragraphed. The whole book is set up in different sections, and it's done in a way that helps the reader to better relate to the material. Okay, so whenever but when you do your reading, you want to do reading that relates to your genre, your niche. Okay? You don't have competition, you have a niche, and there's plenty of room for you in that niche. So let's go on. We're going to be talking about verbs today. Now, verbs are words that express time by showing an action, condition, or the fact that something simply exists. That's a be verb. So your action verbs that tell us something someone or something does, did, or will do, like create, destroy, cough, scrub, laugh. You say, I created the lesson. I destroyed the problems. Those are actions. Okay. Then you have linking verbs. So not every verb is an action. Such as the linking verbs are mostly be verbs, like the word be, or will, or become, or was, or is. So you can't is something, can you? That would be an action. You can't is it. Okay, you can't was it. And so those are all linking words. Okay, become can be an action word. I can become something, but most of the time become is a linking verb, and we'll get into that. Let's go on. Okay, let's talk a little bit more about action verbs, okay? Here's an example of 3 action verbs. Today a man knocked on my door and asked for a small donation towards the local swimming pool. So I gave him a glass of water. Gotta do my part, okay? Anyway, I like to periodically throw a little humor in there. But anyway, so the man knocked, okay? He knocked, that's an action. He asked, that's an action. Okay, I gave, that's an action. So those are all verbs that created these sentences. So you got another. Trevor learned about algebra. Learned is an action. The radio played that forgotten song. Played is an action. The mouse scurried across the kitchen floor. That's an action. Okay? Let's move on. Linking verbs. Okay, Will Smith is a controversial figure. Well, you can't. Will Smith doesn't is the controversial figure. It's linking. It's just linking Will Smith to something else in the sentence. So Will Smith is a controversial figure. Angela seems a little nervous. Seems is just a linking Angela to her emotion. The tornado might be on its way to us. Okay, so might be is linking the tornado to us. Okay? Okay, so life is all about perspective. That's just linking life to the perspective. The sinking of the Titanic was a miracle to the lobsters in the ship's kitchen. So was just linking that sinking to the kitchen, or to the lobsters, okay? And so those are all linking verbs. And so what you got to do really, and this is mostly review for most of you, but there's a few people who still have a little trouble with verbs, and we need to learn how to do verbs in a certain way. We'll get that towards the end of the lesson today. We're going to show you how the way that you use a verb can make things much clearer when you write, and you'll have a little bit of practice, and then we'll move on to the next lesson. Okay, so let's go. Now, be is your most common linking verbs and there's many forms of be. You got am, are, is, was, were, am being, are being, is being, could be, can be, might be, have been, had been, could have been. All of those are forms of be. They link the subject to something else in the sentence. Okay, so all of these are verb forms. They're all verb forms that you can use. But you want what you want to do when you use a verb is you want to be as specific as you can. Now, sometimes you don't want to be specific. You know, sometimes it's not necessary to be specific. If you know that your reader knows something, then you don't have to tell it to them. So that's a strategy when you're writing. If you tell a reader too much when they already know those things, you want to stop doing that. You want to not insult your reader by explaining everything or trying to be specific with everything. You want to use your verbiage and things like that, and your specific nouns, your specific verbs. You want to use them in a way that appeals to the reader. You want to know your reader. Now, of course, you're going to write differently to a third grader than you would to an 80-year-old. And you write completely different from those two if you're writing to a 20-year-old. Okay? So let's go on. So other examples of linking verbs. And so all of these appear, become, feel, grow, look, remain, seem. These are all linking verbs depending on how they're used. They appear intoxicated. Okay? They're not appearing to intoxicated. It's just linking they to intoxicated. She looks strange. Well, she's not looking at strange. This is just linking her to the strange. Okay? Nancy grew weary. Well, Nancy isn't growing weary. She's not growing it. She's not watering it and growing it. That's just linking it. And so these are linking verbs. Okay, none of these are actions. Appear isn't something that they did to intoxicated. Looks isn't something that she did to strange. And grew isn't something that Nancy did to weary. So really, when you're looking at this, a lot of this is kind of technical and everything, and one of the things I don't want to do is hit you with too many technicalities. I just want to familiarize with you to these concepts. Okay, I'm not going to be testing you on that. You're not going to be expected to get a 70 or above in order to get on to the next level. The issue with what we do is practice. It's putting everything into practice, but being familiar with all this stuff. If you are writing it and you're doing it well and you're not able to remember the concept or remember the terminology, so what? You're able to do the writing. That's what we want. We want you to be able to do the writing, and so your practice is the key. Let's go on. Okay, certain words can be used as both linking and action verbs. And we already went over a couple of those. It all depends on how they are used. And this is true of most words. Remember when we did our nouns, we turned all kinds of different words into nouns simply by making them the subject of the sentence. So a lot of words can be done with this. You can turn many words into other words. Verbiage, we say we Googled something. Okay, and so when you Google something, that's a verb. You Googled it, but Google is basically a noun. It's a noun that's talking about a search engine. Okay, that's a noun. But when you Google something, we turn to Google that noun into a verb, and so it happens all the time. And so you'll find that of many words. The issue is how they are used. And so you say the room feels hot. You'd say the room is hot. It is not feeling anything. But then you could say, I feel the wind in my face. Well, I'm feeling the wind there. And so this is a linking, and this is action. You can say the apples taste sweet. That means the apples are sweet, but the apples aren't tasting anything. Okay, so it's linking. Or you can say, I taste the apples. Well, you're actually doing an action, aren't you? I'm actually tasting the apples. So many words can be both. It can be both action and linking. It's not like you can create, and you see it all the time. You can pull it up on, you can Google it right now. You can Google action and linking verbs, and you won't see a lot of things like taste on the linking verb column. It's always going to be in the action verb column. But taste can be both. And so it's hard to come up with an actual list of action and a list of linking words. You just have to understand how they are used. Okay, let's move on. Okay, let's look at some action and linking. Okay, relationships are a lot like algebra. That's linking. Have you ever looked at your ex and wondered why? And so this looked at, you're actually looking at your ex when you do this. Relationships are a lot like algebra, linking. Have you ever looked at your ex and wondered why? And so looks is action. Here's another one. This is action. When wearing a bikini, women reveal 90% of their body. That's action. Men are so polite, they only look at the covered parts. So are is, of course, linking. All of your be verbs are almost always linking, but it depends on how they're used. And then you got an action word where they're actually looking at something, right? We won't say what they're looking at. Okay, how about this one here? This is the linking verb. Artificial intelligence is no match for natural stupidity. Okay, artificial intelligence is no match for natural stupidity. Okay, at what age is it appropriate to tell my dog he's adopted? Okay, and so what is this? Is this linking or is it action? What age is? Of course it's linking. Is this one, is it action or is it linking? Am I doing something? Am I performing an action? Yes, I am. I'm performing an action. Okay, and so we don't know. What age can you tell your dog he's adopted? He doesn't know. Okay, let's move on. Now, verb tenses. Now, this is very important when you're writing, because you need to always have subject-verb agreement. And most of the time, the vast majority of the time, your subject-verb agreement has to be the same throughout your writing. Now, here and there, you can change it up a little bit, as long as you know what you're doing. But you don't want to write in present tense. You're writing in present tense, present tense, present tense, and then you jump to past tense, and then you go back to present tense, then you jump to past tense, go back to present tense. No, it's got to be consistent throughout. Okay? But there's the three basic tenses. If you're going to be an English teacher, just concern yourself with a simple, I'm sorry. If you're not going to be an English teacher, just concern yourself with simple past, present, and future tense. There's all kinds of different tenses, and even I get confused with these sometimes. And I don't consider it a major thing to think about, other than the fact that you need to have consistency in your tenses when you write. The present tense is something that's happening in the present. I feel, charge, become, taste, is. These are happening in the present. Past tense is simply happening in the past. Usually put an ed at the end. Or it could be I felt, I charged, I became, I tasted, I was. That's past. Then you got future. In future tense, it's almost always just add the word will in front of it. I will feel, I will change, I will become, I will taste, I will be. That's future. But the ones that you're going to be using most of the time would be present or past tense. Most of your storytelling is written in the past tense. And so you have to be consistent when you do that. When you write in the present tense, that's basically you're telling the story as it's happening. And so that it's not easy to write an entire story in the present tense, because you're constantly writing in the present. It's you're writing things, writing the actions as they are happening. That's in the present. Okay? This is why most stories are written in the past tense. So, tense is important because you must write in the same basic tense throughout your story or essay. you have to have subject-verb agreement throughout the work. In other words, if you're writing in the present tense, you must remain in the present tense. If past, you must remain in past. If future, you must remain in future. Okay, seldom are you ever going to have a story that's written in future tense. Most stories are written in the past tense. Now, if you're good, and there are people who have written decent stories in the present tense. Okay? But this is just the concept that I want you to be familiar with. Okay, so we'll look at a few advanced tenses. That's not, I don't want to overwhelm you with these, but let's just briefly go over these. You got present continuous tense, that's I am writing. You know, it's present continuous. You got past continuous, I was writing. Future continuous, I will be writing. Or the present perfect, I have read many books. Past perfect, I had read 1,000 books. Future perfect, I will have read 10,000 books. These are tenses. So just make sure when you're doing your tenses and everything, just make sure it flows well. You don't want to bounce back and forth too much. Just make sure it flows well. If you don't recognize that you're writing in the past continuous, so what? It's not a big deal. As long as it's flowing properly and you're remaining past tense, you're remaining present tense. Okay, present perfect continuous be I have been reading Moby Dick. Okay, past perfect continuous, I had been reading The Lord of the Rings. Future perfect intense, I will have been reading for more than 60 years. Okay, and so anyway, almost bounced up to the next slide there, but let's do it. Okay, transitive and intransitive verbs. Transitive simply means that the action is directed towards something. There's an object that the verb is pointing you to. Intransitive means there's not an object that's being pointed to. It doesn't direct action towards anything in the sentence. And so, if you ask whom or what of the verb, that can tell you whether it's transitive or not. And so, this is just, again, don't feel like you have to memorize this. This is familiarization. So, like Mr. Cheney shot his friend. You can say, well, Mr. Cheney shot whom? His friend. So you know this is transitive. We began our journey. We began what? Our journey. And so we know this is transitive because it's directing us towards something. Okay? It's directing the action towards something. If it's intransitive, it's not directing the action towards anything. So you'd have something like, the Dolphins practice at the new stadium. The Dolphins practice what? We don't know. And so we know that's intransitive. You say, Steven Tyler sang in a raspy voice. Steven Tyler sang what? We don't know. That means it's intransitive. Now, linking verbs are always intransitive because they don't express an action anyway. Okay? And so linking verbs can have an object, but they're intransitive because the verb is not being directed towards something. Okay, let's go on. Verb phrases. Now, that's simply verbs that have more than one word. So, verb phrases contain a main verb and one or more helping verbs or auxiliary auxiliary verbs. See, so you don't want to memorize this stuff because you get all messed up like me. Okay, be verbs can always be used as helping verbs, such as the students will be taking the stupid standardized test. Don't get me started. Okay, got to get rid of those things, especially in writing. Just a little side note: if you guys got your children in a public school, they're doing the standardized test. They give the students this little piece of space where they're going to write a developed essay, which is ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. You can't develop an essay in 20 lines or 25 lines or whatever. It's ridiculous. You don't want, these standardized tests really become ridiculous. You got to get rid of them. You don't want to put a politician in charge of your education, your child's education. Leave that to the actual educators. And the politicians will totally screw you up. Okay, so let's move into this. Let's see, like this. The students will be taking the stupid standardized test. That's a verb phrase. It's basically talking about who's going to be taking the test. They should be practicing their chosen craft. which is what we should be teaching these kids to do. We should be teaching them to what their proclivities are, what they're good at, what they're not good at, what will be satisfying in their life. When they get into a life, their career, whatever they want to do, they should be discovering that and working towards it. And so they should be practicing their chosen craft. Okay? Well, anyway, I'm kind of drifting off and going on a tangent. See, one of the reasons I do these PowerPoints is to keep me from going on tangents, but I'll try to stop myself. Okay, helping verbs other than be verbs, like do, does, did, have, has, had. These are all helping verbs, okay? It's like the politician should think instead of following party lines. Concerned parents will protest against standardized testing. Hopefully. Anyway, hopefully I'm not offending you by this. If you're for standardized testing, you should talk to me. Anyway, specific verbs that project specific actions, and this is the key to really great writing. You want specificity. So they're descriptive in nature, and they give your writing better visuals. You ask yourself, what is the image I want my reader to see? And you have to look at the world through your reader's eyes. So your audience is the key to lucrative writing. You want to be able to see through your reader's eyes so that they're getting the message that you want them to perceive. Okay? And of course, you use that verb to provide the image. And so there's general verbs like say. Okay, that's just very general. You can have verbs that are more specific, like shout, purr, mutter, whisper, such as that. You can go down all the way down to run. Run can become skip, jog, bolt, sprint, dash. All these make it more specific. It gives a different visual in the mind, and that's what you're looking for. What is the visual you want your reader to see in their mind? Okay? And so let's look at a little example of this. Use specific verbs when writing dialogue. Remember, dialogue is simply when people are speaking in your writing. And so this is a non-visual dialogue. It's dull. I'll be over as soon as I can, he said. I'll be waiting, she replied. You could have 10 billion different images in your mind with that. There's no specificity. But if you want to be intriguing, you want to have a certain image, you be specific with your verbs. Be specific. This is intriguing, visually stimulating dialogue. I'll be over as soon as I can, he whispered. I'll be waiting, she cooed. Completely different image, isn't it? Okay, and so your verbiage is extremely important depending on what you want your reader to think, what you want your reader to see. Remember, you're always looking at the world through your reader's eyes. You want your audience you're speaking to a certain audience, and you gotta always have that in mind. Always have it in mind, okay? Specificity gives you a better image of what is going on. So let's practice a little bit. Let's do that again. How about this, okay? Change this dialogue to make it clearer. So this is dull non-visual dialogue. I think that burner is too hot, she said. Oh, it'll be fine, he said. Can you make that more visually stimulating? Can you make it so we see something very clearly instead of the he said, she said thing? Okay, so go ahead and I'll put the video on pause and go ahead and practice that. Okay, now remember, specificity gives you a better image of what is actually going on. It'd be interesting to see how you guys dealt with that. But this is the kind of things you need to practice. Okay? So let's go on. That's it for this lesson. What we're going to do, I'm still keeping it down. I'm looking at my timer. I have a timer at the bottom corner down here, and it's got me at 24 minutes, and so I'm good. So remember, I want to keep all of these lessons at a half hour or less. Okay, you just learned the 3 basic parts of speech. That's nouns, pronouns, and verbs. Now let's take a little detour and learn how to use them in sentence structures. Okay, our next 2 lessons will cover subjects and predicates. Now these are very important. You need to learn how these things are built. You can't have a subject without a noun. You can't have a predicate without a verb. I should say without a noun or pronoun in the subject, and then you can't have a predicate without a verb. So we'll cover that and cover how sentence structure is built. You have to understand that to control your sentences. And so if it's like, here we go, well, subject and predicates, no, it's very important. And so if you already know it really well, let's just take it as a little review. Okay, if you just like, well, I don't want to deal with this. Well, like I said, I'm not asking you to memorize things. What I want you to do is apply things. I want you to practice. And so let's go ahead and do this review for most of you on subjects and predicates. We'll see you in the next lesson.